We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Saturday. I always look forward to these podcasts because I'm able to bring in my former on air partner on a radio station and somebody I've known a long, long time. Ed, welcome back. You're a sight for sore eyes.
Always.
Always. That's the best I can say about you.
Yeah,
Sometimes you're a little annoying. The thing is, I don't think people understand is that while you and I are friends and we work together a lot, we never ever worked in the same room or the same building or the same part of the city, really. You worked in
it
the
was
radio
on
station.
purpose.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that was in my contract. Don't work with them.
Yeah,
I'll work with them, but I don't want to fucking see them.
that's
But
right.
but you were in the location of the radio station, and I was at the traffic management center, which is a DOT outlet. We talked all the time, but
Yeah,
we rarely saw each other. On occasion, I'd come over to the station or something, but uh, it was a weird situation. And now here we are again. I'm in Minnesota. You're fucking in Tennessee, and we're doing a show again.
yeah. It's perfect. And you maybe you wouldn't be astounded at the number of people who thought we like hung out together all the time.
Yeah.
Because we had a rapport that well, they must go out and go to movies together and play pool and take vacations, maybe even live in the same house. No, we just talk to each other on the radio.
That's exactly it. That's exactly. I get that with TikTok too. There are other creators that are similar, do the similar things that are really popular and have a big audience, even bigger than mine. And they'll come to me and say, "Could you call Hawk for me because I want to get in touch with him." I don't know that motherfucker. I mean, I watch his stuff. I'm fine with his stuff.
Yeah,
I don't. That's the weird thing about other creators on TikTok. I've reached out to some of them and I've really only gotten response from one, just one. And that's John Colbert. He was on the show. He's a great guy. But the other big ones, they don't fucking talk to me. I'm
yeah.
I'm
Same
I'm
here.
I'm nothing. So what's going on?
I go over to their house and look through the window
Well,
sometimes.
yeah. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
doesn't do that? Um, I mean, a little window peeking is fine. No, it's not. I'm kidding. Somebody
No,
out there is going to say
he's kidding.
he's a window peeker. Fuck you. Um, nah, I was. There's a story that came out that I just found out about, and it's really disconcerting. It's not surprising, but it's disconcerting. You know how Donald Trump will always scream Russia, Russia, Russia. It's a hoax. There's no
Yeah,
collusion, nothing like that. Well, apparently there was some evidence of Russia's involvement in the 2016 election. And we know that's a fact. We know that happened. We know it happened in 2022. But the interesting story is apparently there was this binder with a lot of pretty important evidence. And for some reason, it was delivered to the White House. Now, people are asking why would it go to the White House and not to the FBI? And apparently, Donald Trump, toward the end of his presidency, was trying to bring in a bunch of stuff, declassify it, and release it to the public, allegedly. The
yeah.
interesting thing about this particular binder with these documents about the evidence of Russia being involved in 2016 on the last day of the presidency, guess what? Poof, it disappeared. It's no longer there. Now, Cassidy Hutchinson had said that she knew Mark Meadows had this binder, that he kept it in his safe, and that she believes he took it with him on the way out on the 19th of January, which is interesting. Why would you hide this? And now that the guy has immunity, has he turned it over to Jack Smith? Or we also know that Mark Meadows has a propensity of burning shit too.
Right.
This is a troubling fucking development.
I hope they made copies. I was always troubled about the Mueller report that the major media all let Bill Barr get away with his little summary of it, and then went no further. I mean,
Right.
that became the defining meme, if you will. That well, there was no collusion found, which is bullshit. I mean, Manafort went to jail, and if Trump hadn't pardoned him, he'd still be there.
Right.
Related to that, and so did others, but that he pardoned. But so there was plenty of collusion. And also, there was plenty of obstruction. Mueller even said there's obstruction here that can be pursued after Trump leaves office. I mean, he
Right.
said that. But basically, there was not a lot of pushback from the media. Maybe they thought, well, this is it. We'll just leave it alone. That'll be that. Things will settle down and we can get on with business and so forth. But of course, that never happened because Trump only thrives in chaos. Without chaos, he's easily seen through. He has to have a distraction. He has to have enemies. He has to be under attack. He has to be in the way so that you aren't attacked. You know, all of these narratives he throws out there that the mainstream press still inadvertently maybe lets go right on through or on purpose. I'm not sure which. When you add in the fringe media like Fox and OAN and so forth, you suddenly got a narrative that's going to hang on. And that's insane. And it
Yeah.
has to be dealt with somehow or other. I mean, we can do it. We're doing our part. We're telling people this is a lie. This is an absolute lie. There was plenty of collusion. Russia was behind it. They're doing it again. And there's a lot of other things out there. Republicans don't give a shit about the border. You know, right
No.
now, they're doing Putin's dirty work by trying to keep the money from going to Ukraine, and they're trying to use the border as justification. They could care less about the border because really nothing has changed down there from the Trump years.
No.
Obama had a plan for the Senate and the House that they rejected, wouldn't even take up. So there's been a plan on laying there for years to deal with the border in various ways that the Senate and the House will not take up because the Republicans won't let it happen. They don't care about the border. It's just an excuse to deny money to Ukraine so Putin can win. They're all in Putin's pocket. I'd like to see an accounting of every Republican that gets Russian money, and I'm guaranteeing you it'd be most of them.
Absolutely. Well, you know, that's the thing about the Republicans. They're always looking for some trigger point to go after uh, Democrats. Now, the economy has always been something that they've been pouncing on and constantly shoving down everybody's throat. Oh, the economy is bad. But unfortunately, if you look at the economy, wages are up, manufacturing is up, unemployment is at a 50-year low, GDP is up, and now we're hearing that the Fed is going to lower interest rates. Um,
or at least hold them steady.
well,
You
yes,
know,
hold them steady for
which is a
now,
win.
which
Yeah,
is a
but they'll
win.
be going down.
But at the same time, Donald Trump used to say, "Well, the stock market's the best ever under me." When he left office, it was the Dow Jones was at 30,900 points. Now it's 37,000 points.
Exactly.
Truly the best stock market we've ever seen. Gas prices were always a trigger point. I just paid $2.79 for gas prices. So my question to people is, where's the problem with the economy? I know there are people saying, well, this is expensive and this is expensive. This is nothing new. I mean, inflation is down to almost normal levels that we would normally see prior to this whole problem. But they keep pushing that narrative and people keep believing it. But if you've noticed, they starting to back off the economy a little bit. They can't substantiate that.
Yeah, my problem with the way this is all reported, I mean, most people still are in this idea that the economy's bad. And a lot of it has to do with prices, the way the prices went up, and they called it inflation. It was nothing but corporate greed. And we can
Right.
prove that. Katie Porter's proved, just Google Katie Porter and inflation. She'll do the whiteboard for you, and you'll see exactly what's going on. Same thing with Elizabeth Warren, same thing with Bernie Sanders, and many others.
Right.
They show you that, especially with the sections of the economy that are limited to 3 or 4 corporations, there's nothing but collusion going on there. I'll raise prices if you do. Okay, up they go. You know, this is the way that now. The problem is once those prices go up, inflation comes down. Inflation's down at, let's say, 2%. What happens to those prices? Do they fall? No. They've
Right.
established that benchmark. Prices only go up. And why is that? Because corporations have eliminated competition. All the food we get is controlled by 3 or 4 corporations. Automobiles, 3 or 4. Airlines, 3 or 4. you name it, anything you can name practically is controlled by three or four corporations who do not compete. They act in collusion, they price fix, they play tricks like reducing the amount in a box and charging you the same. All of that kind of stuff, which is easily discernible, easily fixed if the politicians aren't bought. See, that was Reagan's genius. He allowed the corporations to build up this huge amount of money that they can use to buy all the politicians they want.
Right.
And that is what has to be addressed. We need two Democratic administrations with both House, Senate, President, and the judiciary will have to be addressed, as will the filibuster. Once that's done, we can roll the clock back to the New Deal and everybody can be prosperous to the level they are willing to put in effort. This is the thing. We have to establish the opportunity then. The opportunity is gone. It left with Reagan on a fast train and it picked up speed ever since. That's the problem with the economy. Corporations control it. We're in a corporatocracy. They can make prices anything they want, and it has nothing to do with economics as it was previously understood. Right now, it's a corporatocracy, and that's all there is to it.
Well, they look for excuses to raise costs. COVID was one of the things that screwed up the supply chain, and then they started charging more money. Yeah, briefly, and they started charging more money, and then when everything settled down, they said, "Wow, they got used to this shit." Kind of like the frog in the boiling water. They're used to it, so why bring it down? Why not keep trying to grift this and make more and more money? And that's what they did. They made us feel comfortable with it, or at least as comfortable as they thought we could possibly be. And then they just kept it there until they get some pressure, or until the inflation comes down and they can't justify it.
We need a big stick. We need Teddy Roosevelt's big stick. We need to break up the monopolies, the corporations, the trust. All of that is there. They have to be shattered. We did it with Ma Bell. You remember Ma Bell? You had a black Bakelite phone dial with a receiver that sat on your a table somewhere in your house for 20, 30 years, didn't change at all. Suddenly we make up Ma Bell, and now we've got a phone in our hands that has all the knowledge in the world in it. And we can call anybody, anywhere, anytime, and we can order stuff on it. And that Bakelite phone that used to sit there is a distant memory compared to the innovation that came about because we broke up Ma Bell. Was it turbulent for a little while? You bet it was. But out of turbulence, in that case, out of chaos, came order and greater economy, a greater economic impact by breaking up a corporation. You never, ever suffer by breaking up a corporation, ever.
Yeah. Well, even after they broke up Ma Bell, it still happened. We still had some issues with kind of price gouging. If you remember, after they split it up, they had companies that handled just long distance.
Right.
And the long distance, they started grifting money, cheating people out of money. I got taken to the cleaners a couple times with bullshit stuff. I had to go to the attorney general in Minnesota to get it fixed. So just because you split them up doesn't mean they're not going to grift, but it makes it harder for them to do that. And now you can call fucking anywhere you want. There's no long distance charges. How did that work?
Well, this is the thing too, because over the long haul, things seek a level. If you let the free market work, that's what Republicans are supposed to be about, right? Is the free market. That's supposed to solve everything. Just let the market work, they say, and then they restrict competition. Then they restrict regulation. You need regulation. I saw a meme the other day that says lowering regulation means I can poison you without penalty. And that's what it comes down to. Really,
exactly.
That's why we need regulation, because people will go read Ibsen's An Enemy of the People. It holds up. Here's this guy who finds out that the town he lives in has these springs that they make their money off of, but it turns out they're poison, they're killing people. He becomes the enemy of the people for pointing this out. Anytime you do that, the whistleblower is the one who suffers. Now, rather than being rewarded, because people don't want to know if they're making money.
You know, the ironic thing about Republicans is they always have said, we want smaller government.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they want to control abortion. They want to introduce religion into politics. They want to control fucking everything. It just goes along with what they've always done. They say one thing and a certain amount of people believe it, but then they do the fucking opposite. And the people who believe it are oblivious to what's really fucking going on.
If you look closely, and this is absolutely true, anytime a Republican levels a charge against anybody, it's simply projection. Either they or someone close to them is already doing it. You know, I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. And the Republicans have become the enemy of the people. They are nothing but the servants of the rich. That's all. That's it. That's their sole purpose. That's why we have the least productive Congress we have ever had, because Republicans in the House will not allow any legislation out. It can't start in the Senate, it has to start in the House. All they do is obstruct and try to tie the hands of anybody who's trying to do anything that actually benefits people. I think they've made a huge miscalculation with this Texas case against the woman, where the Supreme Court, first of all, Ken Paxton, who
That's going to
I
come back
can't
to bite them. That's
I
going to be
can't
bad.
say I can't say what I want to say about Ken Paxton, so you know what I mean.
He's a
But the
fucking
Supreme Court,
idiot.
yes, well, that goes without saying. There should be repercussion. The same with the Supreme Court in Texas to do this to this woman. That how reprehensible, how without any sort of conscience, how without any sort of ethics are you able to do this as a person to another person? How do you do that? How does that happen? I can't wrap my head around it, and neither can most people, I don't think. And you wait and see. You wait
Well,
and see. There will be a reckoning on this.
there's definitely going to be a reckoning. And I don't understand how Republicans in general don't see the writing on the wall. They saw what happened in 2022 after they overturned Roe v. Wade. You would think at that point they'd be smart and they go, okay, maybe we ought to step back from this because it's not working for us. It's not what they're doing. They're embracing it. Anything that seems draconian, anything that seems to push their agenda forward to piss off the majority of the people in this country, they seem to grasp it. I don't know. Do they not understand what this is going to do to them, that it is going to be a reckoning come election time?
Part of it's the echo chamber they're in, but part of it also is they are ruled by a small group of very wealthy men, mostly men,
Right.
who hold the purse strings to the entire party, and they have to do their bidding, or they will be out in the street, and they will not put up with that. I mean, they will not accept the fact that well, let me roll that back. They know that if they go against these funding people, they're done, because there's plenty of other assholes out there they can recruit to take their place who won't ask any questions. That's what they know. They're in a bind. You know, they're bought and sold, and there's nothing they can do about it now except do exactly what they're told, and that's what they're doing.
Well, money is obviously a big issue in politics, but if you can't get elected into office, you can't grift that money. Do you think it's going to, I mean, do you think they're just going to try to milk this thing as long as they can? Then
Yeah.
2024 comes along, and if they get destroyed, which I think they will, there'll be a blue wave. Not until that time will they say, "Oh, okay, we better change now." Are they that thick-skulled that that's what it's going to take?
Yeah, some of them are that thick skull. Some of them are true believers. Okay,
Right.
Mike Johnson, for example, this is a classic true believer. He thinks he's Moses. He
Right.
hears God telling him. I mean, he really thinks he does.
I know. I
Okay,
know he does.
I mean, this guy not only talks the talk. I mean, Cruz talks the talk, but he doesn't walk the walk. Johnson walks the walk. I mean, we'd have Handmaid's Tale tomorrow if it's up to Johnson. I mean, he would be ecstatic about that. But then there are others who are purely cynical, and they make excuses to themselves. I don't know how long. I don't know how Mitt Romney went as long as he did.
Yeah.
Uh, what accommodation do you do in your head that allows you to actually vote with and have things in common with a party that is essentially evil? And
I,
there's
don't-
no other way to put it.
I don't think people understand how bad it's got to be if a devout Mormon goes, yeah, that's too much. That's
Mhm.
fucking crazy. And I'm not putting down Mormons here. I've known many Mormons, but they're very strict and some weird shit going on there. And there's a certain amount of racism and misogyny there too. But when it's too much for a Mormon, that tells you we got a problem with whatever the fuck Mike Johnson believes.
Yeah. I think the problem has become, and it's with the Republican Party, but it's with conservatives in general, is that the United States, at least the right wing side of it, has now become tribal.
Right.
And there are certain, when you're in a tribe, there are certain identifiers so you know who your fellow tribe members are. One of them is you have to say that I'm an evangelical Christian. Now that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I
Right.
happen to know some very, very wonderful evangelical Christians who spend most of their time doing things for other people, and they are outstanding people. They are walking the walk in the right way, right? And yet they consider themselves to be evangelical Christian. And then you got Trump, who's going to
Right.
tell you that too, but he's going to tell you his favorite Bible verse is an eye for an eye, which is not about, I mean, it's in the Bible, but it's only half of the verse. And the second half says, no, this isn't right. You've heard it said an eye for an eye, for tooth for tooth. That's not right. That's the second half. He doesn't know that.
No, he
And
doesn't know shit.
a lot of others don't either, but it becomes an identifier. You have to say that, or your friends and neighbors will turn on you. You're not a member of the tribe, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what it's become, this tribalism where Trump is the chief and that's it.
He's when when I look at him and we talk about him being the chief of this tribe, I've said many times that it's not like the mob, it's not like a political gang, it's like the Apple Dublin gang, or
Yeah,
or or he's like the chief on F Troop, you know?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's just it's silly. I think if we went back 20 years and put these people in the spot, they'd be laughed out of office. But for now, for some reason now they're embraced by a certain faction of people. You were talking about productivity in Congress, and we're looking at something right now that is not only ridiculous and appalling, but it's potentially dangerous. Uh, we've got the Republicans in the majority for the last well, what, year and a half or whatever it is since
Right,
2022,
right.
and they have accomplished nothing, and they have
Mhm.
a lot of things they have to address. So we have the House of Representatives now deciding that they are going to go ahead with an inquiry into impeaching Joe Biden, which is ridiculous because they have no evidence. Uh, but sitting there on the table is a budget that has to be fixed by January 15th, and Ukraine and Israel and any number of other things. And what do these motherfuckers do? They're so worried about this impeachment that they decide, oh, okay, let's go on vacation for 3 weeks now. It's not pressing
Yeah,
enough to deal with right now. We're going to go down to the Bahamas or Florida or whatever the fuck and dick around. When we get back, we'll worry about it. That's the problem. They aren't productive, Republicans anyway. And I don't know that if they realize how much this is going to impact them at election time, because it's going to be brought up.
absolutely. Well, I got an email from Diane Harshbarger, my congressional representative, this morning, saying, "I'm fighting to keep your tax dollars from going to Ukraine." That's her message. That's her holiday message to her
Right.
constituents. She's fighting us sending aid to Ukraine. It should have said, "I'm I'm supporting Vladimir Putin
Exactly.
in his quest to retake all of the every bit of the former Soviet Union." right now, what people don't understand, Russia is a very weak country right now. California
Absolutely.
beats them economically. Their infrastructure, their military is falling apart. They're almost a third world country. Um, if Putin can restore the Soviet Union, suddenly they're a major power again.
Right.
That's what people don't understand, and that's what he's trying to do before he kicks the bucket. Hopefully, he kicks first, but there'll be another one just like him. Anyone in this country who is supporting Putin, and this is supporting Putin, make no mistake, because after Ukraine, if they're successful there, look out Poland, look out
Right.
Baltics, look out everybody who used to be part of the Soviet Union. You're going to be back.
What I don't understand is if you're old enough to remember Ronald Reagan, and all the Republicans revere Ronald Reagan and all the great things he did. If you go back to that time, I was 20s, early 20s. I know one thing for sure. Ronald Reagan, all the Republicans fucking absolutely hated the Russians. And now it seems like they're openly embracing Vladimir Putin and Russia. And the only change I can see here is Donald Trump.
Right. I mean, once upon a time, it was right to fear the Russians. They had nuclear bombs. They wanted our destruction just like we did them. And it was touch and go. I mean, there during the Cuban Missile Crisis, it could have happened. There were a couple of other times when we could have had nuclear war. Absolutely. So it became a habit to hate the Soviets. By the time Reagan came along, I'm not sure it wasn't largely just using the Soviets as the
True.
bear in the woods. And since then, certainly it has been. After the breakup of the Soviet Union, they really weren't a factor anymore. The idea of what the most of what we had to do with them was making sure those breakaway republics didn't use the nukes on their neighbors or something.
Right.
I mean, and then we had some approachment where we were sharing the space station and we were going on missions together, and everything was looking honky dory there for a while. Then along comes Putin, and we're right back where we were in the bad old days. But people don't get that because he's quote a Christian.
Right. Right.
That I mean, this is the narrative within the Republican Party. Well, Trump. I mean, and the other thing, they keep using the word communist in relation to China, in relation to Russia. They are not communist countries. In fact, never were really. They've always just been authoritarian oligarchies. That's all they are. They have nothing to do with communism. I'm not sure there's a communist state left. Certainly, North Korea is not communist. Once again, it's a cult of personality and oligarchy. Same with Cuba. There aren't any communist countries left anymore. There's a few socialist ones, mostly Northern Europe and so forth.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with that, right? I
Right.
mean, we're half socialist. I mean, the Republicans keep trying to get rid of it, but there's a lot of, I mean, Social Security socialist, your local fire department socialist, you name it. The interstate highway socialist.
Well,
Socialism is a good thing,
well,
not a bad thing.
what's ironic about the fear of socialism by the Republicans is contradictory, because if you look at um, money that the government supplies to states, the red states are far and away the biggest benefactors of handouts from the government. It's the blue states that are paying the bill, California, New York, whatever, but the red states are the ones sucking up all the money. I heard somebody trying to debate this. Well, yeah, but because no, bitch, you got all the money. You're
Yeah,
broke ass bitches, and it's because your system, your strategies don't fucking work.
yeah. Everybody should have to look at. There's two maps you see a lot. One of them shows red and blue, right?
Right,
And
right.
you look at the country and it's all red except for little pockets of blue. And people goes, well, there's a lot more Republicans than there are Democrats. But then if you show where actual people live, there's huge blue areas, California, New York, around the country, and then these little red dots everywhere, like the country has measles. That's your
Right.
Republican Party right there. Now, in places like North Dakota, Wyoming, places like that where 12 people and 20 goats live, the they can gerrymander things so that they always are a red state. But yeah, they get big bucks from the government and they pay nothing. And here in Tennessee, I got to bring this up again. The governor's trying, he's asking people, they set up a task force to find a way to reject the federal funds for education. The reason is they don't want the mandates that come with it.
Right.
If you take the federal education money, then you have to have things like you have to deal with students with special needs, and you have to develop special plans for educating them, and you have to provide transportation, and you have to do school lunches, and there's all kinds of things that you have to do in order to take that money. They would rather not take the money and not have to do the mandates, so that they can do things like teach religion in schools and that sort of thing. And they want to destroy the whole public education system. I personally think Tennessee's a test kitchen right now for this, where they want to have charter schools, religious schools, and homeschooling, all of which are ripoffs. I mean, to normal people, to the kids going to public schools, all of those are just ripoffs. They're taking money from the public schools and giving it to these other entities that don't educate very well, if at all, as a matter of fact. But they're trying very hard to do it. We get anti-poverty money here in Tennessee that they don't spend. It just lays there. In Louisiana or Mississippi, we saw them building volleyball courts and paying ex-quarterbacks to give speeches and that sort of thing with anti-poverty money. Who knows what they're doing with it here? If nothing else, they're just collecting the interest and letting it lay there. If they don't spend it in 3 months, it should be gone. It should go back. That's
Absolutely.
what I think.
Absolutely. Well,
every state.
Everything they're doing here is contrary to what their job actually is. I mean, the government there is specifically to help the people and help the country and help, direct what's going on. The end result is we get a lot of kids or a lot of people in general that are undereducated. So we've got more undereducated, presumably some more stupid people in this country. And at this point, it seems like we already have an epidemic of stupid. We should instead be going out and trying to educate as many people as we can. I've said we should give everybody free college, not because it's a freebie handout, but we're in a crisis right now. We've got undereducated people, and the less educated people we have in this country, the worse we're going to be in the long run, economically, defense-wise, everything. We need more educated people.
Right. When I went to high school, we had two tracks. You had college prep, and then you had the regular, right? In college prep, you got math and science and so forth, and harder English and that sort of thing. And the other one, you got the VOTEC, the woodworking, agriculture, and business courses for girls and home economics, right? Because they were figuring most of these guys are going to go work in the plastic plant or the Tennessee Eastman or at Forest Products, or we had all of these light manufacturing plants around.
Right.
And that's where everybody, you need a high school education to get in the door. So get your certificate, and then you can go work at one of these plants for the rest of your life. The wife will stay at home, use her home ec skills to make the home, and then when the kids are gone, she'll get a little job somewhere on the side, maybe as a secretary somewhere. That was the plan, right?
Right.
And the 10% that are in the college prep thing, they'll go on to college and they'll become teachers, lawyers, doctors, professional people, right? And they'll come back and they'll fill that need here, or they'll be business owners. They'll be entrepreneurs. They'll start up new businesses, or they'll take over their father's business. Well, all of those manufacturing plants went to Mexico or points south, and then they went to China, Vietnam, wherever. So that was all gone, right? So now that wife had to work, and the guy's hanging drywall or mowing lawns, and she's out there at Walmart, and the kids are being fostered off on the grandparents, right? So they saw how they were raised with their parents, with one income, having a car, occasional vacation, and stuff like that, because he was working at the Ford plant, whatever. And then that went away. They don't have that option. And to them, it looks like that America failed them, when really what failed them was the Republican Party.
Wow. I mean, everything has gone up in prices, including medical, including education, but our incomes have not gone up proportionately. So theoretically, we go back to the 60s and 70s and we live how we live. Um, it may seem like we're making more money, but we're actually making less money. We're worse off now than we were in the 70s, and that's hard to imagine.
Well, and at the same time, productivity, what each individual worker adds to the economy is more than doubled. It may even have tripled. Whereas the only thing that's matched that is executive pay. The people who are doing
Right.
the work are not being compensated, only the people who get the stock.
Right.
Once you made the CEO's salary dependent on the stock price, that became the end all and be all, and that's where all of the keeping the workers down became their chief occupation.
Now, see,
Making the product more cheaply and doing it in a different country if you had to do that.
that's where we were smart, Ed, because we went into radio. There was no money in radio back then. Halfway through, there was no radio, no money in radio. Today, there's even less money in radio at this point. People
we hit
always
the sweet spot.
we hit the sweet spot. We hit the sweet spot, and we are living like kings now, aren't we? Based on that experience working in radio. It's funny. Yeah, there you go. Why would you prepare that to have this on the show? That's fucking weird. You're set. What are you? 73 years old?
Yes,
Why do you have something like that sitting around there? I mean, I know if I had my granddaughter over, I could see that. What the fuck is that? Why did you make that?
I was sitting around one night, my wife and I were watching TV, and this came in another hat that I bought. It's like a bucket hat or something. This came in it, and it just occurred to me that I should have a crown. So I
I'm guessing
got some tape, and I taped it up, and I drew the points on it, and I put it on my head. My wife looked over at me and nodded.
So you had a little craft. You had a little craft project.
Yeah.
Was your wife properly impressed by your creativity?
She is. She's got this eye roll thing she does. You're probably familiar with something similar. But
yeah, you usually mine is an eye roll followed by a backhand, but your wife's a little less aggressive than mine. Oh wow!
It was serendipity. It was here today, but I told her
you do tend to do some weird shit though.
Yes, I told her, but that my reign would be firm but fair. Then I got the backhand.
Then you got the backhand. Well, when you do something like that, it reminds me of when we were back on the radio and we had another partner, Terry.
Yeah.
Terry was an interesting guy. He was a great guy when we were working to him. Then when he went to management, I hated that motherfucker. But that's beside the point. But you remember the little thing that Terry used to do during Valentine's Day? Which really was weird on a public radio station to do it. I don't know if you remember this.
Valentine's. You have to remind me.
Now, keep in mind we're on radio, so nobody can even see that he's got this. But he said it's Valentine's Day. He cut out a little heart,
yes.
Like you would on Valentine's Day. He put it on his chest, and he goes, "It's Valentine's Day. I got my heart on. I'll have a heart on all day."
Yes.
Now that was funny.
Yes.
But I don't know how the fuck he got away with it.
He did. It was just because the way he said it quickly, nobody could nail him. Yeah. Terry's not on
social media.
I think social media at all, but his wife is. I keep in touch with her. He's retired down in Arizona now, hanging out, living the good life. Well, like I say, we hit the sweet spot in radio. We got in there when the money was there, and we got out before it went away. What can we're like pirates.
We're like pirates, failed pirates, fucking dumbass pirates. You know, when I look back at my life and I went into radio, I thought the same thing everybody thinks. They go, "Oh, that'd be cool. I just talk for a living. I don't really have to work." And to a certain extent, that's
Oh
true.
my God.
But you always heard these people that would make big money in radio or in the media and stuff. When you get in it, you realize there's really only two of them. Two of them
Yeah,
making the money. The rest of us are working like we're working retail. That's
right.
basically what it is. And
Yeah.
and people say, God, it must be so exciting. No, motherfucker, it's not exciting. And it's even worse when you can't buy a new car.
Yeah. Do you think it's exciting to get up at 4 in the morning every morning, 6 days a week,
Yeah,
and
no shit.
drive through the rain and snow to get to your job and then have to be bright and entertaining for sometimes 6 hours, sometimes eight,
Well,
depending on the weekends?
and the thing about it is that I was getting up at 4:30 every morning for 27 years. You were worse than that. You were getting up earlier, right?
Yeah, that's right. I got up at 4.
It was
And
fucking
I
ridiculous.
but in addition to be the morning host, and pick the music and all that, I was also the news director. So I had to get in there and do all of that. Plus I had side projects like school news, and I was responsible for all of the PSA stuff and that kind of thing. So I had volunteers who'd come in and record PSA. I'd do that and edit that, put that all together. Plus I produced a bunch of music programs. And so, yeah, I was a pretty busy guy.
So with being the morning show host and being the news director and all this other stuff, surely you got paid double what you would have normally gotten paid, right?
Yeah, right.
No, they
No, see that's funny that way. When I was hired as the news director, right?
right. And Terry was the host and I was the traffic guy.
And then a few years down the road, suddenly they decided they only needed one guy in the morning, so I became the morning host and the news director. But guess what? I didn't get double pay. I got
No.
the same pay. I
And
just did twice the work.
they cut somebody out, they saved money, and they still begrudged how much they paid you and me,
Yeah,
however minimal that was. I mean, that's what's
yeah,
fucked up about it. I mean, whether you're talking about public radio or the corporate world, they really begrudge people making any money at all. They want it all. And until
yep,
they have it all, they're going to put the pressure on you, which is what they did.
yeah. And because I was at a stage in life, an age where if
Yeah.
I quit there, getting another job in radio probably would not have been in the cards.
No.
I mean, you start young, you work your way up, and hopefully, a lot of people move around a lot. I moved around a lot in the beginning, and then I landed, and that was fine. But I knew I had a pension. I had tax-free savings. I had really good health care and all of that. And other radio and commercial radio, you don't get any of that.
No
If you're
shit.
not the
No.
if you're not the morning guy, and in some cases the afternoon guy, you ain't crap. They can
No.
replace you like that. But before I can, all I have to do is raise my hand and I've got a replacement. I mean,
Right. Right.
it's
Exactly.
ridiculous.
So just to give you an idea how we've progressed. We worked in radio and we did it on a regular basis, didn't make much money. Now Ed and I are doing the same thing, making no money. We're
Hey,
fucking brilliant, aren't we?
yeah, what
Way
happens
to go.
next? Yeah. Well,
Way.
see, the other thing is, I actually, in addition to having two jobs at work, I had two more jobs. I was an actor, so sometimes I get up at 4 in the morning, I come in and do my shift, I go home, grab a nap, then I go to rehearsal or to performance that night. And I wasn't in a show all the time, but pretty often. Plus, then I did commercials and stuff, voiceovers and
Right.
videos and that kind of stuff too. So I was a pretty busy guy.
Yeah, no shit.
But now I'm not doing any of that. So this is kind of like I'm retired, and this is just fun.
That's the greatest thing about being retired. I tell people I can get up anytime I want. I think I got up at 8:45 today, which is crazy based on how my life was, but it's nice to have that flexibility to do what you want when you want. And the same goes for the show. In spite of the fact we're not getting rich doing it, I got nobody telling me how to do it, which
Right.
is a welcome relief.
Right. And there was, many years it's wonder my tongue wasn't 4 times normal size all the time because I had to bite it so much between doing the news or just doing regular, just rapping on the radio. I had to be very careful
And that's the big
about,
difference between you and me, and why
right.
I left earlier, because you
Yeah.
bite your tongue. I didn't.
Right.
I didn't bite my tongue. I tell you what, we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back. I want to talk about the Donald Trump situation in DC. This is fucking interesting. So hold on. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. I have Ed with me, obviously
Hey.
credible as ever. You mentioned something. It's one thing to wear that beautiful crown that I think you said you spent 3 minutes on.
Yeah. Tops.
I love how you've added to the luster here by tilting it to one side.
Yeah.
It's
It's,
it,
it's kind of a jaunty look,
it is jaunty. I don't know that I've ever looked jaunty in my life, but you definitely look jaunty at this point. Wow.
Thanks.
Now
Well,
let's talk about your cognitive abilities.
I actually believe about half the country would just love to have a king.
You think so?
I really do. I mean, I think I don't think number one, I don't think they understand how government works. Most of them. I'm
No.
abdicating. I'm abdicating with the possibility of coming back. But anyway, I really do. That seems to be what they want. The ones who support Trump, it's Trump is great. Trump can do everything. He can fix everything. I just want Trump to be in charge. Yada yada. You do. I mean, that seems to be what they want.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I mentioned it in the podcast yesterday. I'll mention it again. Uh, Donald Trump has been asked about him wanting to be a dictator, and he's not saying no. He's kind of embracing it. He thinks it's kind of funny, and he goes, "Yeah, I could be a dictator for a day or maybe a week or whatever." I read an article where they interviewed some people about the concept of Donald Trump wanting to be a dictator. And there's one person who responded that really troubles me and kind of adds to what I suggested before about an epidemic of stupid in this country. This is what the person said. She goes, yeah, I'm all for a dictator. I think it would be good for this country. I thought my folks were a dictator. My kids call me a dictator. I like the idea of having a dictator. And my suggestion is somebody needs to grab this motherfucker by the ears and say, look, a dictator isn't a misshapen potato. You got to fucking understand the definition of dictator. But I think you're right. I think the average Joe who supports Donald Trump don't care if he's a dictator because they feel like he's going to let them do whatever they want and put us libtards in our place, which won't
Yeah,
happen, but that's what they think.
exactly. They think they're part of the in group. Is what it
Right.
comes down.
And they've
He
never
will
been
be
in
a
the
dick.
in group. They've never been
Right.
in the in group before. So this is cool to them.
Yeah, that's it. They grew up in an era when the stuff they believed was looked down on.
Right.
Rightfully so, because it was based on patriarchy and racism and xenophobia and all of the bad stuff. Any ism or phobia or whatever you want to come up with. It was part of what was governing in America up through the 50s. I mean, we had to keep picking away at it. And then we finally got something serviceable toward the latter part of the 60s when we had Black people being allowed to participate. We had Hispanics being allowed to participate somewhat. We had women being allowed to participate.
Yeah,
In one
absolutely.
of my most recent TikTok things, I point out that we were no more enlightened at the beginning when the Constitution was formalized in the 1780s. We were no more enlightened than Saudi Arabia is today, so far as women, blacks, Hispanics is concerned. We were just like that. We were a citadel of white men.
Right.
In their case, it's Arabic men, but still the male of a small group. That's what everything was geared toward. Women weren't allowed to do much of anything unless a man would allow them to do it and say yes. Yeah, you can get a car loan if a man signs for it. Yeah, you can have an apartment if a man signs for it with you, your father, your husband, your brother, whatever. And so many things. We were not an enlightened society, but that's not thing one. A lot of the women are so browbeaten, downbeaten, whatever, brainwashed. They think it's the natural order of things that some guy should be telling them exactly what to do, that they should make less, that they should never be in charge of anything. They're comfortable with that for some reason. I don't understand it. And there are a lot of white guys the same way. Well, I think we need a strong man telling us what to do.
Right, exactly.
It's insanity.
And I think a lot of young people don't understand that this whole marginalization of women and people of color and LGBTQ, when it was really accepted by everybody, wasn't that far back. It was in our lifetimes. It was in the 60s, 50s, certainly. And like you say, women couldn't get a credit card, couldn't get a car loan, couldn't buy a house. They were stopping people of color from voting or having any kind of rights. We were alive when that happened. I tell this story one time. I lived in Minnesota, so it was fairly liberal, but I'd watched on TV in the 60s. I'm like 5 or 6 years old. And they showed in schools how they had the black and the white water fountains.
Yeah.
Black people go to this water fountain, white people go to that water fountain. And I remember being like in first grade or second grade, not knowing fucking anything about anything and not thinking anything negative about somebody of a different color. But I'm standing in a line. We go out every day at a certain time, stand in line to go in the water fountain.
Right.
Now, in front of me was Shirley Hill. Nice girl, black girl. And she's in front of me. My little fucking weird ass mind at 6 or 7 years old is going, wow, should I be drinking out of the same water fountain as Shirley's drinking out of? Well, I did it and I didn't die or get sick or anything else. So after that, I said, fuck it. I'll get behind Shirley any old fucking time.
Yeah. Well, this was the thing. See, I didn't have to do that because at your age, there were no black kids in my school.
Really? They couldn't.
Right. They had their own little school, both high school and at elementary school, and we never we saw each other, around, but we didn't go to school together. We didn't go to church together. Certainly, two separate worlds, separate but very unequal.
Right.
No matter what Plessy versus Ferguson said. It was very unequal and so forth. But, I was surprised when I got to Minnesota many years later that, the school I worked in, where a radio station was, North High School, was very much segregated. It was mostly black kids. We were there because we were the radio station. We had a magnet program that was supposed to bring in white kids, and did.
Yeah.
And then we became kind of a pocket of white kids. I mean, we had a lot of black kids in the school. We had fewer in the radio program. They also had theater and a few other things that were supposed to. It was supposed to integrate by wanting to go there because of the program. Well, of course, it didn't work.
No.
But Minnesota did their segregation by real estate.
Well, when I first got in that program that you're talking about with the radio station, it was at the vocational. It was at a vocational, nobody's high school. So everybody came from their respective high school, the black high schools, the white high schools. So we all converge at this vocational and took the class in radio.
Right.
After I left, then they moved it to one specific,
they closed the vocational school and moved it to North High School,
which was a predominantly black school. And somebody said to me, would you have gone to North had you wanted to be in the program? Leave your high school and go to North. And I said, no, I wouldn't have done that. And people thought, well, because there's black people, that no. because all my friends are at my high school. As it was, I was going half the day at my high school, half the day at the radio station. So I still had that connection to my high school. Had nothing to do
Right.
with color at all. It had to do with why would I uproot myself from a whole different part of town and not be around my friends and change my whole thing. It was an attempt, I know, for integrating. And I guess it worked to a little extent, but it didn't really benefit the radio station. It would be better if we had one location like we used to, where everybody, black, white, Native American, whatever, could converge in one spot and come together, as opposed to separating somebody out.
Well, this is true. See, because my family lived in the black section of town, I was kind of a leg up when we had integration.
Right,
I had been around black people all my life, whereas the majority of the kids who went to the high school, which served both the city school and all the county schools, most of the county kids had never been in the same room with a black person before.
right,
And a large number, especially of the bourgeoisie kids, the sons and daughters of the business people and
right.
professional people and so forth, unless they had a black maid, which many of them did, um, they hadn't been around black people either. So I was a very unique individual in that I knew both worlds pretty well. And then I worked in high school. I worked in a grocery store that served primarily the black community and lower income whites. So I had a pretty good handle on the economics and politics of my small town without even knowing it. I understood who made the rules and who had to follow them. Let me put
Right.
it that way.
You probably realized something I realized long ago. I had a father who was racist, and in the 60s and 70s, it was accepted to be racist. But well, you were woke before it was cool to be woke. There's no question about
Right.
that. But you probably realized something I realized later, when you got to actually meet people of color, whether they be black, Native American, whatever they are. It turns out they're just fucking people, just fucking
Exactly.
people. It's like,
Exactly.
to me, somebody's facial color or skin color is no different than hair color or eye color. Do you hate blue-eyed people over brown-eyed people? No. The whole thing, seemed ridiculous to me once I was confronted with it, because where I grew up was kind of white bread too. We had some people of color, but not very many, and it was nice to be able to get exposed to other people and realize all these fears and all these hateful things were all just bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you do with that when we see this pushback now? I mean, you see it with voting rights, you see it with economics, where there's a certain portion of the population, this tribalism I'm talking about, the
Right,
white tribe, the whole "you will not replace us," that kind of thing. And that refers to people of Jewish heritage, black people, Hispanic, anything but people that hail from the British Isles, kind of thing.
right.
That, or Germany too, probably. But we've got to we have to slap that down again. It happened once. It happened in the 60s when black people said, no, we're not going to take this anymore. And they stepped up, and then they got white allies that helped. But I don't want to make it seem like that it was something that white people did. No, we joined in to a
Well,
certain extent. But it was black people saying enough is enough. We're going to do this. And then, of course, the politics came along with Johnson, Humphrey, and people like that, changing that playing field, and then having a Supreme Court that made sure that voting rights were such that black people could actually elect representatives and so forth, that made the difference. Now, the pushback is there. I mean, the Voting Rights Act has already been eviscerated to a certain extent, and they want to do the rest of it. They want to say there's no racism anymore. Come on, we had a black president, so there
all right.
can't be any racism.
Well, that's,
Idiots.
when I was growing up, amongst my group of people, my family and such, Martin Luther King was portrayed as a villain, you know,
Yeah.
because of the racism and all that stuff. But as I grew up and I watched and I learned what happened, that's what caused me to revere what um, Martin Luther King did and the African American community did. It's truly amazing. I mean, they decided to push back while they're a small minority. They have no power, they have no authority, they had nothing, and they decided to fight back without violence.
Yes.
And they made some headway. That is truly an amazing result of an effort that anybody's would never do because the odds were against them completely. So the fact that they accomplished something, of course, some of the white help was a big factor too, but they were really going up against insurmountable odds, and they were able to make some headway. Not enough, but they made some.
No, and there were martyrs along the way. Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X. Many of the black leaders, suffered the ultimate penalty
Right.
for their activism, but they did advance the cause. But the people have to realize that was a big price for them to pay, of course.
Now I have a theory as to why this is rearing its ugly head again. Of course, Donald Trump is the one that made it okay to say all this shit. But do you think people are getting concerned now and this racism is raising up uh, because of this concept that eventually white people won't be the majority anymore? You know,
Absolutely.
that they'll be in the minority and people are freaking out. The old people are freaking out about it. I don't think young people care either way, but the old people are going, fuck, what's going to happen when white people are the minority? They'll come after. I had somebody say that to me. Are you okay with the white people not being the majority anymore? I don't give a fuck. He goes, well, it makes me nervous. And I said, well, maybe that's indicative of how you treat people of color now. Maybe you're worried
Exactly.
about retribution. I don't treat
Yeah.
them badly. I'm friends with these people. I'm not worried about if they have the majority or not, but the people that have been racist all their lives are concerned. But you know what? When it happens, people of color aren't going to get retribution on these people. They're just going to be happy they can live their lives comfortably.
Absolutely. I think that's true. I may have mentioned this before because I tell a lot of people about it. You've heard of To Kill a Mockingbird, both the book and the movie. Most people have seen the movie and think they've read the
Yeah.
book, but they haven't. They may have been assigned to read it, but they didn't. They cheated and watched the movie, which is slightly different than the book. They leave out some things and so forth. But what most people don't realize is that Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, that was her second book. Her first book was called Go Set a Watchman. It tells the same story to a certain extent. It has the same characters. She wrote it first, but she couldn't get it published. But the publisher read the book and he said, there's this little piece in here about this trial that we think would make a really good novel. Why don't you expand that? Which is what she did. Now, in the original book, Go Set a Watchman, there is a trial where a black man's accused of raping a white woman. He has an arm that doesn't function. And this is in both books. But in Go Set a Watchman, Atticus, who is the father, he's the lawyer, he is able to get this man off because it's obvious he could not have committed the rape. Now, in To Kill a Mockingbird, he's convicted because it's a racist jury and they're
Right.
going to convict, and he's killed before he can appeal. So it's a little bit different. Atticus in To Kill a Mockingbird is very much what we consider the white savior. I mean, he's this upstanding guy who he will do the right thing, right?
Right.
But he doesn't challenge the system. He works within the system, right? He's going to be this guy's advocate within the system, the defense attorney and so forth. But in Go Set a Watchman, Scout, who's the young girl who's telling the story, she's an adult and she comes back to the South after being educated in the North, and she finds Atticus is much less of a hero than she thought. He's racist to a certain degree, belongs to the League of the South, and so does his brother and his law partner and so forth. And she's outraged. She's outraged that she didn't realize this about him. And her uncle, who's a much more prominent figure in the first book, explains to her that we can't always be as good as we want to be. both Atticus and I were raised in a racist society, and we'll never get rid of that totally. But what Atticus did was he raised you not to be.
Exactly.
He raised you to be someone who saw everybody with equal worth and would eventually work to change the system in a way that he could never do. So that was his contribution. And in my estimation, it makes him a much more real character than the Atticus Finch of To Kill a Mockingbird, who's kind of this stoic hero figure. Whereas the Atticus of Go Set a Watchman is very much a conflicted figure, like real people really are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the character of Calpurnia, who's the black woman, who's kind of the nanny to Scout and her brother, she's a much different figure because she's been replaced by a racist relative of Atticus's sister, who comes in, and she's kind of resentful in the book. She's much more true to life character in that she sees, I mean, she loved the kids, she took care of them, but she realized she was being exploited. Right. So it's a much better work for me than To Kill a Mockingbird, but everybody loves To Kill a Mockingbird because the white guy is the hero.
Just want to remind folks you're listening to Mike and Ed's Book Club. Make sure you read that book that Ed suggested, and
go out and buy it and tell them that I told you to get it, and they'll send me some money. No, I'm kidding.
But we'll discuss it next week, and there'll be questions. There'll be a pop quiz. I wanted to talk a little bit about the what's going on in Washington D.C. with the election interference case, Jack Smith's case against Donald Trump. At this point, it is only against Donald Trump. We're suspecting there'll be superseding indictments at some point. We'll talk about that too. But Donald Trump continues to insist that he has complete and utter immunity over anything, meaning he could do absolutely anything because he was president at the time. And so he appeals it to an appellate court. And before he can even get an answer from the appellate court, Jack Smith does something unprecedented. Well, maybe not unprecedented, but unusual. And he decides to go to the Supreme Court and say, I need a decision on this and I need it quickly. And he did that justifiably because he knows that was going to be the process, that Donald Trump would ultimately take it to the Supreme Court. And then Donald Trump and his lawyers are outraged about this because this undercuts the one strategy they have, and that's fucking delay. What do you think is going to happen with the Supreme Court in this situation?
Well, there's one of two things that's going to happen. Either they're going to say, yeah, he's got immunity, and everybody will go, you fucking idiots. Do you know what you just did?
Yeah.
Because Joe Biden is still in the White House.
Right, exactly.
He's got immunity.
Right.
He can have the CIA pop Donald Trump if he wants to, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. He can lock up Donald Trump, say this guy's a foreign spy. We're going to execute him tomorrow morning. Nothing anybody can do.
He can cancel the 2024 election and say, I'm king now.
Yeah. Because there is no accountability to any president, and they can do whatever they want. They're not going to do that.
No. Well, there's another factor in this why they may or may not do it for that reason, but there's another bigger reason why they won't do it. Because if what Donald Trump says is true and bringing this fascist state into America, that makes the Supreme Court essentially powerless. They don't even they don't even need the Supreme Court. So if they side with Donald Trump, they pretty much wipe out any power that they have, any authority they have. And for that reason, over and above any good reason, they won't do it. And I know people are very concerned that, the Supreme Court's buddy with Donald Trump. You got to understand, Donald Trump's on the way out. Everybody fucking knows it. He can't survive these convictions. The Supreme Court isn't going to side with Donald Trump in this. There's no basis in law, and there's nothing to gain by doing it.
Also, I wonder, it'll show a couple of things, right? If they should do it, then they lose all credibility.
Right, absolutely.
Because there is all of the law schools, deans of the law schools, everybody is going to say, this is bogus. This does not work. The mainstream media aren't going to be able to spin it, or nobody can spin it anything. It's wrong.
Right.
And the other part of it is, it will be interesting to see if a certain judge, Clarence Thomas, would recuse himself from that decision, because his wife is part of this whole mess. I mean,
Uh,
she's deep
Very
into the
deep.
insurrection, deep into the insurrection. And if anybody should ever recuse himself for any reason, this is the classic case. He has to recuse,
But
and that lowers the margin.
it lowers the margin. And I can't imagine that any of these Supreme Court justices would vote the way of Donald Trump. There's just absolutely nothing to gain unless you're trying to create chaos and cause problems in this country. And they may very well be wanting to do that. But a lot of people are concerned about that. This is the one thing I hate about the media. Okay, it's going to the Supreme Court. It could go either way. Oh my God, what's going to happen? I don't see it going the wrong way under any circumstances. I just don't see a path for it happening, because there's nothing to be gained and everything to be lost. You know, the
Well, it
Supreme
should
Court's
be
already at a sit
unanimous
stone. It should be unanimous.
with a
Now,
recusal. It should be unanimous with a recusal, but I'm betting if it wasn't unanimous, there could only be two, and that would be Alito and Barrett, who might possibly, in some way or other, dissent.
well,
Nobody else is going to.
no, absolutely not. Roberts is going to side with the law, I would think.
Yeah.
Uh, I
All the
just
liberals are going to vote against Trump and Roberts and possibly Gorsuch.
right, right. If they have any sense and have any hope of credibility in the future, because they also have to look at the election coming up in
Yeah,
2024. They know the Republicans don't have a fucking prayer. And if they
right.
continue to piss off the Democrats like this, they're just asking to have that fucking thing stacked and take away a lot of power from these motherfuckers. And we know what you've said in the past about FDR. When they get pressed a little bit, they go, "Oh yeah, okay, we'll be good."
Yeah, they have to, because they know it can be done.
Yeah.
They know it can be done, and no more fancy trips, no more motorhomes for free. I mean, if they're looking at it for their own self-preservation and their own economic health, they would back down. Absolutely.
What do you think about Jack Smith taking this tact? Like I say, it's a little unusual that he would go around the appellate court. And what's funny about it is now the appellate court came out recently and says, "Oh yeah, we'll hurry this up." They
Yeah.
they got kicked in the ass by this thing too. I think
I
people
mean,
worry about. Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I'm
Well,
just saying.
one of two things.
What?
Your turn. I'm not
I,
saying nothing.
I'm not saying nothing either. No, all I'm saying, yeah, got to, okay. Well, then go ahead. You have the authority. You have the calm. So go ahead.
One of two things will happen. Either the appeals court will go ahead and quickly rule in the favor of Jack Smith, which will negate the Supreme Court from having to take it up, or the Supreme Court will move quickly and slap down Trump's appeal. And either way, Jack Smith wins, because Jack Smith's a winner.
But what's wonderful about this is, Donald Trump spends his life delaying, diverting, distracting, doing all this stuff. Once the Supreme Court comes down, ain't no place else to go.
Exactly.
Now, people are worried
Exactly.
about, well, he'll just delay it. March 4th won't work. Well, it's conceivable March 4th doesn't end up being the date, but it's not going to be delayed months and months. It might be a week. It
Right.
might be 2 weeks. It might be 3 weeks. Nonetheless, whenever it comes up and it gets started, it's going to end well before the election. And that is crucial. But I get people coming to me all the time. Every day they come to me and they say, "Oh my God, what's going to happen now? He found a way out." What they don't understand is Donald Trump is fucking drowning right now. Why they
Right.
give him credit of having any power and any wherewithal, I don't know. The fucker is drowning. All you have to do is watch him on TV. He's got nowhere to go.
Right. And he's got nothing new to say.
Oh,
He can't say, here's my new health plan. This is what we're going to do, because he doesn't have one, and he won't have one.
No.
He's going to say, "I'll be a dictator for a day because I want to build a wall." But there's nothing behind that. You can say, "I want to build a wall" until you're blue in the face. He's been saying it for years. There's no wall because the way of doing it isn't there. The same thing with drill, drill, drill. He cannot tell oil companies what to do. He doesn't
No.
know that yet, but he can't do it.
And
You
the
know?
other thing he doesn't know is that United States of America under Joe Biden right now is producing more oil than at any time in history, including the time Donald Trump was president.
Exactly.
So,
There's no more drilling to be done. They're already drilling to capacity. They might want to open up certain areas where it's easier to drill than where they're
yeah.
drilling or processing, but no, there's nothing to be gained by that. That I personally hate the oil companies. I think they're terrible. I
No,
think they do
absolutely.
awful things, and I would love to see fossil fuels gone within 10 years. It won't happen, but we can phase them down. But it
Well,
definitely won't happen if they let Trump back in there.
it may not happen in 10 years, but at least we're on the path to do that.
Yeah,
Because we've been
exactly.
talking about it for years. At least we're on the path, and hopefully our children and grandchildren will benefit from the ending of fossil fuels. The other thing that's kind of the elephant in the room, and I've said this before, and I'll say it 100 times more. This trial in New York, this lawsuit with Letitia James, I honestly believe, at least certainly to date, but it may be the most devastating decision that Donald Trump has to struggle through because we've got the prosecution has rested, the defense has rested. There might be a couple of rebuttal witnesses for the prosecution, and there's going to be closing arguments. And at some point between now and sometime before the end of January, Judge Engoron is going to step up and say, okay, this is what you owe. And,
Yeah,
they're asking for 250 million. I personally think it's going to be more than that. I don't see
yeah.
how it could be less than that based on
Nope.
what we know. It could be a lot more than that. But I think when that decision comes down, that's going to devastate Donald Trump. It'll break him as a human being because of his personality, his narcissism. He identifies as rich, powerful, owning property, having prestige, and all of that will be taken away. All It'll be gone. I mean, even if they don't kick him out of New York for doing business, they'll take so much money away from him that he can't do business anyway.
Right. I mean, he was already at the point where no banks here would deal with him.
No,
He was dealing with Deutsche Bank and Russians and this, that, and the other for any sort of credit. Now there'll be no credit, none.
but no
And
credit from anybody. How do you do business without credit?
you don't. And that's great. The other thing that this decision will show, and I think you'll start to see some other people pulling back away from Trump because they don't want to be associated. I
Right.
mean, if you've got a business, I mean, look at the pillow guy. I mean, he's bankrupt essentially.
He's done.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's because he was in there so much with Trump, right? People stopped buying his pillows because he was associated with Trump. That's what it
Right.
comes
Exactly.
down to. Any business that is associated with Trump giving him money or so forth is going to see a pushback. I guarantee it.
Well, one thing that people, there's so many fatalistic people in this country, and they're always looking at the downside. They'll come to me and they'll say, yeah, he'll lose the lawsuit, but he'll just appeal it and delay it forever and ever. What I think a lot of people don't understand is he can appeal it, he can
Yeah,
delay the decision. However, he has
it
to pay the
stands.
money. He has to pay
Yes.
the money and put it at least in escrow. So he's still got to come up with 250, $500 million, which he can't do. It's going to
Well,
be
I don't know.
liquidating company.
He's got those NFTs out there.
Oh, fucking A. Did you get your order in? If you buy 47 of those NFTs at 99 bucks
99.
a piece, you'll get the
Yeah.
trading card with the piece of his suit on there. God damn it. It's right around Christmas. How do you not buy that?
I don't know. That must be one big suit. That's all I got to say.
Oh, well, not necessarily. I don't know how many people are going to spend $5,000 to get that fucking piece of suit. I have no idea. But he's Donald Trump, I imagine him on TikTok in about 5 years talking about side hustles to make enough money to buy ramen to survive. That I mean, you think
Oh,
about this.
please, please.
Yeah, I would love that. But you think about this now. You brought up Mike Lindell. Mike
Yeah.
Lindell sided with Donald Trump. He's a broke ass bitch. Donald Trump is going to be a broke ass bitch. Rudy
Rudy
Giuliani,
Giuliani,
he's
broke
waiting.
ass bitch.
We're right now waiting. By the time you hear this podcast, we may hear what the damages are, but it could be 20, 40 million. I mean, if you look at that story, I didn't know as much about the story with Rudy and these two women. I
Yeah.
mean, he absolutely decimated their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, emotionally, logistically. I mean, Shay Moss says she wouldn't even go outside. She couldn't go out to dinner. She was getting threats. She was getting stalked. People coming to her house. Um, they even said that Shay Moss went to get a job at Chick-fil-A. Why you go to Chick-fil-A under these fucking,
Yeah.
if I'm a black woman who the Republicans hate, I'm not going to fucking Chick-fil-A. But
Not the
anyway,
best. That's enemy territory.
that's
Yeah.
enemy territory. And so I don't go to Chick-fil-A just based on their stance on a lot of things. But
Me too.
as she's doing the interview, this is what she says. She's doing the interview. The guy doing the interview takes his computer, turns it around. It shows a picture of her and it says fraud across the top. So clearly she didn't get the job. But what these women have gone through, they deserve
Yeah.
20 or 40 million plus punitive damages.
Absolutely. And you had Rudy the day before. The day before, he's out there talking to the press saying, well, I'm sorry people overreacted, but I was telling the truth. He
Right.
just disparaged her again.
Well, yeah. He's doing exactly what Donald Trump did. First of all, he's standing up like Donald Trump is in the lawsuit, saying,
Yeah.
I'll be vindicated." You already lost, motherfucker. Rudy
Yeah.
Giuliani lost. We're just trying to figure out how bad your ass is going to get kicked. And
Yeah.
then they kept talking about the truth. Rudy Giuliani was going to testify, and then surprise, surprise, he didn't testify. I wonder whose choice that was. I'm
I'm sure
thinking
the
the
lawyer
lawyers.
said, yeah, I can't trust you, mother. You just spout this shit and you're addlepated, Rudy. You
What?
know,
I just saw him outside the courtroom being asked questions, and he's pontificating and saying all this shit. The truth will come out. I never lied, and all this stuff. And the lawyers in the background going, "Yeah, come on, Rudy. We got next time. We'll be here tomorrow. Let's go, Rudy." And Rudy wouldn't go. And finally, he almost grabbed him and dragged him away because Rudy is his own worst enemy. I mean, here's a guy that was the mayor of New York City, supposedly a hero, a prosecutor, and now he's this bumbling Mr. Haney motherfucker.
yeah, well, this is the thing. I think once you're in that rarefied air, once you get a taste of that celebrity, you always want it. I
Right.
think Trump suffers from this too. It's narcissism to a degree, but it's a love of the limelight. It's a love of being admired by a group of people, or at least in your own mind. And they're loath to give that up. So you point a camera at Rudy, he's going to go into it regardless.
Well,
He's going to come up with something. And I don't see why Trump isn't in this lawsuit as well, or a different lawsuit, because he said, I heard him right up out of his mouth say that Shay was actually her mother was a professional, which this doesn't exist, a professional election scammer. He said that. She's a professional election scammer. In
he
other
said
words, she does this all the time.
he says some weird things. He always adds things to
Yeah,
his insults, like "your human scum," as opposed to "scum not bad enough."
right.
Humans. He pulls shit out of his ass and when I look at Rudy Giuliani or any of these other people, I'm trying to decide, did they just finally go crazy and really
Yeah,
believe what they're saying? Or did he see, well, Donald Trump's on my side. He's got all kinds of power, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And even though I know it's wrong, I'm going to do it because we got the power to shove it down their throat. I think it's more the second, because they can't be so stupid to really believe what they say. They just believe they had the bullying power to run over people. And now they're finding out they got no more power. They're getting
I
pushed
think
back.
I think it certainly starts out that way, and with a number of people, the Mark Meadows and people like that. Yeah, it's always that way, or the Stephen Millers.
Right.
It's always that. I think Miller probably sees Trump as a useful idiot. I think Miller probably sees himself as some Machiavellian figure who's going
Right.
to seize power ultimately. But he sees Trump as being a useful buffoon. There are many of those. I think probably a lot of the Washington Republican elite, after a point, saw that Trump was inevitable, so they would try to use him, but they never trusted him or believed in him. Mitch McConnell, walking that tightrope that he's been walking for the last
Right.
6 years, but some of them become true believers, and I think Rudy has reached that. Number one, Rudy's an alcoholic, and I'm talking, dregs. This guy's drinking shaving lotion. If he can't get anything else, I guarantee you.
Yeah. Well, he may be drinking shaving lotion sometime soon if he's already struggling financially. And when Shay and Ruby take the rest of his money, that's going to be the interesting thing. When you look at the Lindells, more so Rudy and Donald Trump, their life has been built on power and authority, and they really identify as these wealthy guys. That's why they have the power. What's going to happen to them when they take that away, especially Trump? I've said because that is so much his identity, I feel like once that's all taken away and he can't move anymore financially, he's just gonna kind of implode and be this shell of himself. And all these criminal cases will be like stepping on a bug
Yeah,
because there'll be
I,
nothing left of them.
I think you're right, and I actually look forward to that.
I do
But
too.
very much so. So we'll see how soon that turns around. But I agree with you that the New York case is key. That it will, once he starts losing, he will lose quickly and often.
Right. It's like an avalanche. Once the first thing falls, everything falls. And the wonderful thing about it is, as much as he wants to delay Georgia and Florida and DC and all this stuff, this motherfucking one is going to be done in the next 30 days. No
Yeah,
question. Absolutely for sure. And that will be the first in many that is the death knell to Donald Trump. And I think it will be the most devastating for him because once he can't move and he has no money, that's why I say, how is he going to run for president if he's got no money and no
yeah.
support? And going, they're talking about if he starts his trial in March. I heard somebody lay this out with all the trials and how they're temporary, at least tentatively scheduled. He's literally going to be in court virtually every day from March until the election. How's
Yeah,
he going to run a
perfect.
campaign?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe you don't. Maybe you say that's it. Maybe all of his money people say that's it because he's not going to spend his own.
Right.
So they'll pull their money support, and he'll still try to grift some from Ma and Pa, and they'll still send him their $100 a month.
Right.
But that's not enough for a campaign. You need the Koch brothers. You need all of these, like Leonard Leo, or all of these people
Right.
that the big buck guys. The two guys down in Texas. There's two of them down there. These evangelicals that are back in the Texas government.
Well, pretty soon, Trump is going to be grifting not to live a lavish lifestyle, just to keep the fucking lights on. He is going
Yeah.
to get into that desperation mode. He's probably in it already, but he has no idea how bad it's going to be. In his whole life, he's never struggled for money. Well, surprise, your time has fucking come.
Well, look at Rudy. He was pretty good there, and then first thing you saw him on the singer, the hidden singer, or the
Right, right, right.
anonymous singer, whatever. If you see him on there, and then he's recording people's phone messages and stuff. Him and
The
Jordan
cameo,
Santos.
yeah.
Yeah, they're doing the cameo thing. I imagine you'll see Trump on there for long.
Yeah,
And
It's actually fairly fucking embarrassing that these
I'm
people.
I'm starting to wonder when Trump becomes Hitler, in the sense of you can't find Hitler in the phone book.
Right.
When does it happen? When does well, we already know his daughter is starting to go by Kushner. You know, so I unfortunately his sons have no alternative, but I think you'll see that name start to really disappear. It won't be on any buildings, that's for sure. It won't be on any golf courses, that's for sure, because he won't own them or control them anymore.
And it's not going to be a plus. I mean, that's the ironic thing is he made money toward the end of his career here, not building anything, but licensing his name.
Yeah.
Now that that's all he does and nobody wants to license his name, he's fucking out of business.
You know, and this is something I got to point out to people that it didn't dawn on me, or I never pursued it enough to know. Right? Remember Trump University? He charged people
Yeah.
$35,000 to go to his real estate. It wasn't a university. It wasn't even a school, to take his real
Right.
estate course, which he guaranteed you'd wind up as a millionaire because he's going to teach you all these techniques and so forth. Just a scam, of course. And ultimately, there were lawsuits, and he was fined $25 million, right? He walked away with 90 million.
How do you do that?
Because that was, he, what's 90 plus 25? You do the math, right? He got that much.
115.
Yeah, he got that much money in, but he got to keep a chunk of it.
He collected 115 million and he had to pay 25 million, so he pocketed
Right.
90. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good
Now,
profit margin.
yeah. And I mean, that's a scam. I mean, every Trump stakes and his AF, not AFL, what was it? The team he owned, the defunct league,
Oh yeah, the USFL.
USFL, yeah, and all in his airline and all of that stuff, you know. He made a little money on each one of them, even though they failed.
Yeah,
But
it is fucking unbelievable. Well, we're gonna wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Ed, thanks for stopping in. I know people are always anxious to hear from you, so there you go. Get the king hat back on. Yeah, that's going to you're talking about this becoming a custom to being famous and being stars and stuff. I mean, who
yeah,
knows more about that than you and I, with
that's right.
with the kind of notoriety you and I get from this show. It's amazing. I can't even walk outside.
No,
Not so much because there's crowds, but I got a hip problem.
yeah, same here. Yeah, I've got steps. You know, I have to go out through the garage.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Ed, thanks very much. We'll talk again next week, and let's hope some good shit happens between now and then, so we can laugh at the Trump fucks and talk shit about the rest.
All righty, sounds good to me. Take care, Mike.
All right, those of you listening, thank you for taking the time out of your day. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.